It's Tuesday. Hey, we missed last week.
Yep.
But we're live.
Facts.
We're live. It's Taylor Primetime.
Mm-hmm.
Useless video clips are so great. Go ahead, Andy.
What time is it? What time is it? It's prime time. It's prime time. What time is it? What time is it? Prime time. It's prime time. Oh, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world, on Tuesday nights, well, most Tuesday nights we do a thing called Prime Time. And tonight we have a very special guest, Mr. Jim Curlin, Editorial Director, Mr. Jim Curlin. Hi, Jim.
Howdy.
Nice to see you, man.
Good to be seen.
I haven't seen you for a year. How have you been? We also have Miss Lindsay Love, as always. What's up, Lindsay? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Your host, Mr. J. Parkin.
Yes. We did it. We're back. We did Primetime. We're doing okay. We could end the show now because we did it. Right.
Yep. Good talk. Good talk. Thanks.
Good talk.
Good talk. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim. Ladies and gentlemen, Taylor Primetime, Season 2, Episode 6. We have now done 6 things in 2021. I'm pretty proud of that. Thank you for letting us take a break last week. We took a little break. I did a little traveling. It was fun. But this week is very special. We do have Taylor's editorial director, Jim Curlin, here. And you know what's really funny, Jim, is all of us got an email before we went live from an avid Primetime watcher, viewer. He's a team member right now. His name's Evan. And he sent us photos of you giving a factory tour.
Nice.
Spectacular. I may have forwarded it to you. No, I didn't. I sent it to Gabriel because I wanted him to see it. But anyway, your hair was like...
Oh, was it long? The long hair days? Yeah.
Long hair days. I mean, that was 2 years ago though, right?
I was going to say, I've been here long enough that I've had the short hair days and the long hair days and back to the medium short hair days. So just the different hair eras at Taylor.
Well, welcome to Taylor Primetime. As you guys know, Jay is special. Why am I special? Tobias said I'm special. Oh, I know why. Here's why. Because I'm wearing a Philadelphia Phillies hat, Jim. Just for you.
Represent. I like it.
You like that? That's all right.
I know you have several, so you can change them out throughout the course of the evening.
I have so many Phillies hats. I love the Phillies. I truly love the Phillies. They're not my team. I think we discussed this before, but the reason I love the Phillies is because my favorite player of all time was Lance Parrish. He was a catcher on the Tigers, and he played for the Phillies for 1 season. So I became a real big fan of the Phillies, and I got tons of Phillies hats. Maybe I'll go back to the other one in a minute. Anyway, for those of you who are new to this show, welcome to Taylor Primetime. It is a guitar nerd talk show where that's what we do. We talk about guitars and nerdy stuff, and I'm really excited about that. It's so great to have Jim on the show. We're starting a new series. Once a month, we're going to try and hone in on parts and focus on parts of the factory tour. We, in COVID times, can't give factory tours right now. So, I mean, why not? Let's do this. The funny part about this show, and I don't think even Andy and Lindsay know this, but yesterday I was freaking out because the first guest that we were going to have on, who will join the show later from our production department, had to cancel. But I was also thinking to myself, well, how in the heck are we going to launch this idea? Like, we're just going to go into the milling department and start talking about it. I don't know if it would make sense. Some of the people who watch the show regularly, they've been on the factory tour. They've seen it. My mom hasn't seen it. Jim, you know, my mom watches this show regularly. In fact, she gets really frustrated if we don't do the show. So I'm glad that we're back on the air this week. Anyway, so I didn't know how we were going to kick it off. And then it just came to me. Jim, can you jump in and save the day? And he's here. He is here. So if any of you out there have had a factory tour of Taylor guitars by Jim Curlin, it is by far one of the greatest things you'll experience. He's our editorial manager. So we're going to dive in a little bit into wood and steel in a second. We do have some segments we got to take care of first. So we're going to go through some segments. Andy, we don't have any hate this week, but do you have a song?
I do. We have no haters this week. We usually have haters.
We do.
But not recently. So
I think we had some hate in the comments.
Yeah, I saw that, but it's too late right now.
We have hate right now in the comments?
Too late. I think so. That's what our producer said.
Oh, well.
Everybody needs a hug these days. Maybe now more than ever. As some have had no hugs for almost a year. To try and stay safe, some hug only their beer. 2 shows with no haters. How can that be? It could be our new record. If we make it to 3, we'll always have love for haters. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, on with the show.
Andy, it's so good.
We
did get hate. Yes, we got hate. That dude needs a hug. Hey, everybody in the comments, give him a hug. Everyone needs a hug these days at 6 to 10 feet away. We love you, man. We love you. All right. So, Jim, as you know, we dive into this next segment. It's called What Are You Listening To? Andy, you got a song, don't you? But check this out. Check this out, Andy. Let's live produce this. I'm going to play this new clip for What Are You Listening To? And then you can sing your song.
Okay. I'm ready.
All right. Here we go. Useless clips. They're so good.
What's new? What is new? What did you listen to? And why did you listen to it?
Jim Curlin, special guest on the show tonight. What are you listening to?
I think the most recent thing I listened to was Stephen Wilson from Porcupine Tree.
Ooh.
Had a new solo record, and I was checking that out the other night.
That's amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Lindsay, what are you listening to?
Yep. 2 things. Judith Hill dropped an album last week. Judith Hill. She dropped her album called Baby I'm Hollywood, and it is so good. Go check it out. Listen to it. And then Laura Muvla, who's she's an artist out of the UK. She dropped a single. Amazing.
I'm gonna listen to those. I
You
wrote that
should.
down.
You're gonna love. You're gonna love it.
Which one will I like the best?
I'm not gonna do that. They're both amazing. They're both different. Judith Hill is gonna make you go, oh my, like you're
Yeah.
gonna like, yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me. You're gonna hit me up afterwards.
Lindsay,
Okay.
you're so hip. Like you're like the hippest cat I know. Like you're always
It's
dropping
true. It's
these
true.
like names that I'm like, who's that? I should know who that is, but I have no idea who that is.
Oh my gosh. Well,
She
thank
might be
you.
making it up.
Oh,
I could be. I could.
I wouldn't know.
Andy Lunch.
Go listen to her.
What are you listening to, Andy?
I'm into the 90s, man. So every Friday we have a little sales team happy hour, and we sort of have a discussion that we all get together. And lately we've been creating Spotify playlists. And so this one that we created Friday, everybody submitted 2 or 3 songs. It's 4 hours long. It's called "It Came from the 90s," and it's all tunes that people in my coworkers picked. So you got stuff like Kate Bush, Tori Amos. Those are the ones that I added. Temple of the Dog, Jane's Addiction, No Doubt, Fiona Apple, Toto. It's all over the place, but it's all 90s all night long.
Steve Therilt hit me up and he asked me about hip hop questions, and his playlist was just nothing but 90s hip hop. I was into it. Anyway, I'm listening to a band. Taylor Guitars. We work with a producer. His name's Will Yip, and he's been producing a band for a while called Tiger's Jaw from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Yes, if you're a fan of The Office. Scranton, Pennsylvania. I believe that's where they're from. They're around Scranton. They just came out with a new record called I Won't Care How You Remember Me, and it's awesome. That's it. Tiger's Jaw. Jim?
Sir, yes,
Do
sir.
we have an echo? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I have a weird echo over here. Do you hear that?
It's gone now.
It's gone.
Okay.
I did hear it, but it's gone.
It might have been you.
No.
All right. Enough of the nonsense. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We are going to kick off this factory tour series, but we want to get to know you a little bit better. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Kirlin, the editorial director at Taylor Guitars. He has been here for 1 billion years, but we'll let him talk to you about that. Jim, what in the heck do you do?
What do I do? My title is editorial director. It's kind of a fancy way of saying I do a lot of writing. So, and I've been here for a while. I started in, well, actually this month it'll be 23 years. So I started in 1998.
Wow.
As a PR assistant in our PR department. And my boss at the time took me under his wing, and I always wanted to write about music. And I fell into Taylor after working for an internet startup company, which was, built on vaporware. And to come to a company that actually made a tangible product was amazing. So I came here then, and since then, I've been just working on the PR marketing side, writing. My boss was the original editor of Wood and Steel, our in-house publication. He created that with Bob and Kurt, and took me under his wing. And, over time, I was able to do more with that. And now I'm the editor of that. And there's just so much writing that we do, Jay, it's, we're now into the content explosion. So we're writing every which way. So, I'm one of our storytellers on our team. There are many storytellers, and it's been cool to get more voices in the mix. But I do a lot of writing. I give tours. I used to give tours when we gave tours. By the way, next week is the 1-year anniversary of our stopping giving tours.
So this is what's interesting. This is what's interesting about Jim is the Taylor walking history book. I mean, you've been here. Whenever I have a question, I often go to Jim first. I mean, it's just easy. Hey, Jim, do you remember when this happened? Yeah, hold on. And it's like, you'll figure out exactly the date that something, I mean, I don't
always know the answer, but I usually know how to get it. And, some of that has just been hanging around and listening to stories from everybody, from Bob and Kurt to some of the other the old timers who've some of whom have retired, Larry Breedlove and Bob Zink and Tim Larank and Steve Baldwin, some of the guys who were back at Taylor in the day and just slogged it out when we were, a tiny company long before I was there. And just to get that oral history, of the company and try to absorb it as much as possible. I've been privileged to have an opportunity to do that. I mean, I know, Jay, something that we're talking about is doing that with Bob and Kurt, kind of mapping that out this year. And I think that's going to be super important because you want to get those stories while you still have them, while people are still there to tell them.
Raise your hand in the comments if you would like to see or hear Bob and Kurt walk through the history of Taylor guitars. I mean, how cool would that be? And a lot of it, and we'll get into it in a minute, but a lot of that, the idea of that was, Kurt and I were talking about it when we were sneaking around and making content for the, transition of ownership to Taylor, to its employees. And Kurt had this idea. I'd love to just sit in a room. So where it all started, Jim, actually was when we recorded the voiceover for the company announcement video. Kurt really just got comfortable sitting across the table from Bob, and I'm sure I have the recordings somewhere. I know I have the recordings, but just the humor back and forth between these guys. They did stuff that, I mean, none of us will know, right? I mean, they experienced these things. I heard them on record today in an interview today, chatting about the early days. And when they decided, I think I was pretty far away, but when Kurt said this, Bob said, "Do you remember when we first started paying ourselves?" Right. Yeah. And I think what Kurt said was, yeah, you said that it was okay for us to pay ourselves $15 a week.
Yep.
Like $15. So imagine that. I think we're getting a lot of thumbs up in the feed over here. But Jim, how has Taylor changed over the years as far as storytelling is concerned?
Well, I think in some respects, it really hasn't changed that much. I think, the stories, obviously, there are new stories that come out. I think there are new tools to tell stories, right? Because we're at a point now where we've got the web. Let me put it this way. When I started at Taylor, I think that within the first couple of months I was there, we launched the website. Like the website did not exist. Remember the 90s, that's when the web was born. So, that was a new thing. That was a new thing. And now we've got so many more tools for storytelling. We've got, there's video, there's so much we can do. There's social media. When I came aboard, Wood and Steel was on newsprint. It was on fish wrap. It was like, I think the irony of that was we would have this publication and we'd have pictures of guitars on newsprint, but then we would do a nice glossy insert for Taylor wear. So we'd have these beautiful glossy pictures of t-shirts inserted next to pictures of expensive guitars on newsprint. So it was kind of ironic, but just last year we introduced a digital edition of Wood and Steel. So, that gives us a whole new platform to integrate videos and other kind of storytelling, to what we do. And of course, look, we make guitars, so we want people to be able to experience them in visceral ways. And so being able to hear demos, see them being played, all that stuff is really, it really comes alive in new ways. But honestly, when you think about it, it still comes back to, like you said, when you're in a room with Bob and Kurt, those guys tell stories, and there's nothing like that. And especially when it's like recounting, their journey that's starting out, like you said, not paying themselves for the first 10 plus years that they were in business, two guys who just gutted it out and attracted, some other like-minded folks. It's inspiring, so you find those stories and you share them with people. And then, as you connect with other people in the Taylor community, we have an opportunity to share their stories too, because everybody experience, who has an affinity for our guitars, whether they buy one or they play one, whatever, their guitars mean so much to them. And so I think we've always tried to present those stories too and share it, because it really does create a sense of community. And so it's awesome. I mean, it's like there's no shortage of stories themselves or storytelling mechanisms to roll this stuff out.
This was a great comment by Carlo. Who's going to explain newsprint and fish wrap to anyone under 25? True. We'll get there. We'll do a whole episode on newsprint. But that's true, Jim. It is. It's enhancing. It's really fun. You know what's fun is having people on Primetime who have been at Taylor for long enough for people to leave, Lindsay, and for her to come back to the company. I mean, you've seen people go. You've seen people. I mean, you were there during the Breedlove days. I mean, did you see Terry leave and come back? No. That was before your time, correct? Terry Myers?
That was before my time, I think.
Was it?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Did he
that
freeze?
Was before your time? How long have you been there, Andy? I can't remember.
This is my 15th. I moved in 2005.
Moved in 2005.
Yeah.
And Jim started. Are you from? How long had you been living in California before you got the Taylor job?
Me or Andy?
Jim.
I moved to San Diego in '94. Yeah. So then I started at Taylor in '98.
Holy smokes. What were you doing before Taylor?
For a couple of years, I was working for an internet startup company because it was right around that time when all that was starting to percolate. And that was, it was cool, but it was, it was like no pay and, like 18-hour days. So that eventually crashed and burned. And it's funny though, because when I drove out, I came out with a buddy from high school, and it just so happened that he had bought a guitar, some boutique guitar that I'd never heard of, from a company called Taylor. And I didn't know who this company was. And, then lo and behold, not long after that, I ended up working for Taylor.
That's awesome. Have you been bored yet?
No. I mean, no. There's always something more to do. And it's good. I mean, I would rather be too busy than bored any day of the week.
Okay. I need to explain something. We cannot operate as a company without Jim.
Yes, you can.
Would you? No, we can't. I don't know what we would do. Yeah, we could find somebody who could write, but it's different. Anyway, we'll move on to the next subject. We'll get into the factory tour a little, but before we talk about the factory tour and how it started and all of that, did you ever expect when you started at Taylor Guitars that in 2021, Bob and Kurt would announce that you are now an owner of Taylor Guitars?
No, absolutely not. I mean, just the fact that if you would have told me I'm going to still be at the company, 23 years later, I don't think I could have conceived that, just because that doesn't really happen that much anymore, right? People move on, they go from one gig to another. So no, but things have changed so much under the roof there that it's continued to be stimulating and interesting. And that's the cool thing about it. It hasn't been the same job. It's been, a variety of different jobs the entire time. But no, as far as employee owners, I mean, I think the question probably that was starting to percolate among employees was, as Bob and Kurt have gotten older, okay, what's going to happen, right? Who are they going to pass the company on to? And so I think the employee ownership thing is it's so amazing. It's humbling, to be a part of it. But I think it's also a relief for a lot of employees, because I think they have now a clearer sense of continuity for the company, and they see a path ahead that really is going to be much more aligned with what Bob and Kurt were all about when they first started the company. So it's awesome. It's exciting.
It is pretty awesome. I think we're all still in a little bit of shock. As we continue to communicate stuff, as we're working on potential stories that we're going to tell, future stories that we're going to tell about it. Yeah. It's really fun to see some of the old timers. I talked to David Jones briefly, right? And hopefully we can have him on the show one of these days. I mean, the guy has such a great story that he told me that he used the last $5 that he had to buy a pair of shoes to come to his Taylor interview, and he's been here ever since. So little things like that. There are nuggets. There's these little stories that are just so special within Taylor, and it's really fun. And it's so great to have you on the show, Jim. We're all big fans.
Happy to be here, man.
That's for sure. We're all fans.
Yep.
So let's get to where we're going with this episode. Like I said at the beginning, in future episodes of Primetime, we're going to have a lot more artists on. We're going to have more people that we work with who you need to know, you need to meet, right? Remember, Taylor Primetime is about opening the curtain and letting people in to see how we really are. And during this COVID pandemic time, we had an opportunity to do so. So we're here and we're not going anywhere. We'll take breaks from time to time, but we're not going anywhere. So once a month, Lindsay and I were talking about this. We thought it'd be a really good idea. We've heard you loud and clear that you want to meet folks from our production team. The men and women who work tirelessly day in and day out to craft the beautiful instruments that you guys play. It's so great. We work with some of the most intelligent and talented people, and why not? Let's bring them on this thing and introduce them. One of the great ways we could do that, of course, like I said at the beginning of the show, is to take you on a tour of the factory. We have compiled some clips, some videos for you guys to watch. And again, if you ever had the opportunity to have one of Jim's tours, it'll blow your mind. When we do open for tours, Jim, I hope people write in and say, can I get on Jim's tour?
I do have to offer one note though. The Mac Daddy of giving tours is Bob Taylor.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
And you, Jay, you've been on a Bob tour, and they're just like, there's nothing like a Bob tour, and it really can go on forever because he knows every item in the factory. He knows its history. He knows how to use it. And I love that no matter how big the factory gets, he'll still refer to it as the shop. It's always still going to be the shop, but he knows everything, whether it's the original side bender, over here, it's just any opportunity we've had. I think, Jay, you'd probably feel the same way to slip in on a tour that he gives, if it's to dealers or whomever. It's always it's a treat because there's always some new insight that we glean from him. It's fantastic.
He is for sure the Mac Daddy of giving tours. We do have some great folks in the factory who can give a tour. Tim Larank, he was on Primetime. Tim Larank can give a really good tour. Yours, Jim, I've just learned when I first started at Taylor and then they asked me to do tours, I would kind of sneak down and find a Jim tour, and it was easy. Your storytelling is it's beautiful. It's a delight to listen to you talk about our instruments and walk through the factory. So what I did was I went and I captured fresh footage. This footage was as of yesterday. So producer Gabriel over here in the feed helped me put together some edits real quick. They're little short pieces of content, but the idea is we're going to dive into, in future episodes, one department at a time and show you how these things are built from start to finish. I think it's a great idea. It's all Lindsay's idea, by the way.
It was ours.
Come on.
It was ours.
You also know everybody. You're like, this guy should do this and this guy. Anyway,
That's
get there.
True.
She does. Okay, so let's dive into the first clip. We're just going to walk through. Actually, we can talk about the tour, Jim, first. How did it get started? Were you there when it got started? Were they doing them when you started your career?
Yeah, they were. Well, kind of, sort of, because I think it just sort of evolved organically. I mean, because, in the beginning, Bob would give a tour. It was like if someone came, another guitar maker or someone made arrangements to come take a tour, it was really low key. And obviously, early on, it wasn't a big space for, to tour. But over time, as we began to grow, it sort of became a thing. I think when I started, I feel like we didn't have public tours at 1 o'clock quite yet. And I think before marketing started to do them, HR was doing them, I think, and it was a little bit more on an ad hoc basis. So it was like if there was a VIP or somebody came by who deserved a tour, but we weren't promoting it. But then I think shortly after I got there, it might've been the next year or so, we began to make it a thing, and scheduled it at the designated 1 o'clock time, and it kind of just slowly grew from there. Still early on, it was, we put notices in wood and steel, so that's how people would learn about them. Here and there, we'd promote it in other ways, and it just gradually started to grow and grow. I mean, I remember early on, there'd be days where I was the tour guide, but I go downstairs and no one had showed up for that day, so I didn't have to give the tour. But those days are long gone. I pulled up a couple of stats. I don't know who compiled them, so I can't give credit, but I would. But apparently, since we started recording tours that we gave, we've given 5,285 tours.
Wow.
And the other, that's a lot of tours. And then the other data point that I have is that this is more recent, but since 2015, and obviously this excludes 2020 because we weren't doing tours with COVID, our average annual visitor count was 7,500 people. So we'd average about 7,500 people who'd come through to take the tour in a given year. I mean, you've been down there, Jay, in the summertime when families come, and there's 75, 80 people. Luckily we've got headsets with different frequencies. We have to sometimes split it into 3 groups, and it's just the choreography just to get everyone through the factory is challenging at times. But it's cool because you get different people. You get the Taylor enthusiasts that they just, for them, it's a pilgrimage. They want to see how their baby was created. They want to see it all. You get the family that's along for the ride. It's like they come out to San Diego, and guess what? All right, the kids, you get to go to, we'll go to the zoo or the Wild Animal Park, and dad gets to go to the factory. But that's what's interesting too. We're getting an echo there.
There an echo?
It's major.
Man. In any event, it's always interesting because you why bring people. Some people don't know anything about cars, and we want to give them a good introduction to what we're all about.
I'm trying to mute people. Well. Someone hit the reverb pedal.
the thing that I enjoy about the tour, Jay, is that even someone who's been there for a really long time, things change so fast in that shop that Bob calls it. Like, I could. There's times when I would go out on the road for a month or two, and I come back, and the whole department is moved, like the whole, or the year when they made all new side benders. That some of the side benders that we used to be manual, where you have to actually crank them in to make the different cutaways, and then eventually they came up with a way of doing them by machine. But all of a sudden, it was just built and installed, and a wall was knocked down. And it just seemed like a whole new space so quickly. It's always refreshing for me, especially somebody who's gone a lot, to come back and kind of get grounded with a good tour. And I still look forward to going on them, after being there for so long.
Yeah.
Yep, that's for sure.
We're still reverb. Andy, you have to do the whole show.
By yourself.
Okay.
Let's try this again. Hold on. You guys bear with us. Okay.
I'm not hearing it. Uh-oh. No, I guess he wasn't kidding, huh?
All right, we're back.
Well, that wasn't awkward.
No, it wasn't. But we fixed it, didn't
We're
we?
good, huh? Yeah.
Nice.
We did.
Ah! Technology is awesome. We did a little reboot. We're back to normal. Everything's good. Okay. I agree with you, Andy. In fact, I walked into the tour into the factory yesterday, and because we've spread everything out, or because we want to keep the numbers and all the people spread out in the factory, we actually have done that. So I don't have any footage of it tonight, but we'll go through it when we do the first factory tour episode. And but we moved some of the CNC machines that were in the bridge glue section out into where the lunch area is, where the ping pong table was. So all those CNCs. So I walked into the factory yesterday, and it was like, so I walked out and walked back in, and it was the same. I mean, they change everything. And then there's some new stuff in the milling department that's really great. In fact, we have some footage. So if you guys, without further ado, here's what I would like to do. Jim, I'm going to play a clip. And after we're done with that clip, I would love it if you would walk us through what we just saw. Just like you're giving a tour.
All right. I'll do my best.
You think you got the chops? All right, here we go.
I don't know. I haven't given a tour in a long time. We'll see.
All right, here we go. This is. I'll tell you what it is. We're going to look at the milling department first. Yes. Did you see that new saw?
I was gonna point that out because it looked like the new one. We'll have to have a spotlight on that particular saw because I haven't seen it in complete action yet. But it looks amazing. I saw a clip from Bob the other day, and it looks phenomenal. I think it's a CNC liner saw or something. Yeah,
it's a CNC resaw.
Yeah,
right. And it's so that one wall. They're all vacuum, so it holds the wood in. So at the end of the day, it's a big giant deli slicer. So what it allows us to do is get our backs and sides actually more accurate. So instead of in certain woods that we use, we will. I was told this yesterday. Certain woods that we use, we will get the wood, we will make the cuts that we need, and then ship it away and get the thin slices cut. Now we don't have to do that anymore. So what we can do is we can get larger lumber and cut it down to size. And in Bob speak, we can control the thickness of each piece of wood. It was spectacular when I saw it. It was phenomenal. So
yeah, I'm excited about that too. No, that's good. And I think we're going to probably be bringing other woods in if we're doing more cutting of urban woods. That's an opportunity for us to do it. And I think the more precise the machines are, the tools are that we're using, the less waste. The more we can calibrate those cuts in ways that don't waste wood. So it's huge.
Yeah. So what did we just see, Jim? What is the milling department in the factory?
Well, it's that part of production, or you could almost call it pre-production, although it's part of guitar making. Where we've gone through and we've begun to condition the wood. It's been dried, seasoned. There's so much that goes into conditioning wood before we ever start making guitars. And so milling is that process where it starts to go from more raw lumber into smaller guitar-y looking pieces. It's neck blanks and tops and backs and sides, and where we're doing resaw work and really getting it prepped for production. But you really have to go through a lot of conditioning. We sticker the wood where we put it on pallets, and we separate those pieces with sticks to allow air to circulate through it. At some point, Jay, we should probably spotlight some of the other drying kilns and other apparatus that we're using, because we're doing a lot of, when you think about like the innovation and R&D that we do with guitar making, but even on the drying wood part of it, there are things that we're learning that are helping us really control it and stabilize it, because that's part of it is taming that wood and getting it to behave. And it used to be once upon a time when we were a smaller company and decades ago when you could get maybe more choice woods, but now we're working with what Mother Nature provides. So we have to be adaptive. We have to be innovative in the way that we cut, condition the wood in order to enable it to be, conducive to making instruments. And so we're doing some pretty cool stuff in-house. It's exciting to see. Yeah,
and supply chain in a pandemic is real. It's a real tough thing. I know there's a port back up here in San Diego even, and there is wood sitting out in the ocean on a boat in containers that we can't get yet. And some of it we've been waiting for months upon months, 6 months, longer, etc. So that's the milling department. Next part of the tour, Jim, you tell us what we see right after we see it. We can't unsee it.
Good, because I can't tell you. So a little bit of that at the end was also part of milling, where we're rotoplaning the surface of those tops, and we're able to get those sanded down to a very specified thickness. I think a lot of Taylor enthusiasts probably know this, but we work to such precise tolerances, and there's so much geometry that has to become aligned, in building a guitar. And so our ability to control the thickness of a top, for example, really helps us optimize the tone, for the guitars that we're making. So there was that. I think another part of that in the earlier part of the clip was, we're also grading wood, we're matching sets. So we're looking, you can see them sort of looking at the stiffness factor for some spruce tops, and just seeing where they might be appropriate. They might be checking the grain structure to see which series it might be appropriate for. So there's so much that goes into that as well, just kind of determining what guitar this belongs to.
Yeah, it's the detailed work. This is fun to see. We often get questions. It's pretty funny, but we do get the question, why do your guitars cost so much? It is a question that I see a number of times per week on social media comments. Why do your guitars cost so much? The next little clip that we're going to show might help answer that question just a little bit. Hey, before you go, Jim, Lindsay, did I see a video of you doing inlay work, rosette work recently? No. Isn't there an old video on YouTube?
I don't know.
Really?
I'll be honest, I have no idea. Is there?
Really? I think someone shared a video with me and asked if it was Lindsay. It could have been somebody who watches the show. I'm going to look it up.
Anyway. I don't think so, but that'd be that would be me having a horrible memory. I don't think I've ever done a video of that.
Really? Okay. Awkward. Jim, what did we just see?
Well, we definitely saw some rosette action happening there, and some other inlay. I glanced away, but I don't know if it was top purfling or if it was for the back of the cover. I think it might have been top. By the way, Andy shared with me one time a kind of cool little fact about rosettes, because we think of them as very decorative, which they are. They're beautiful and they usually complement the other appointments on the guitar. But there's actually a practical reason that a rosette is done too. Lindsay, do you know?
No. No.
I think, are you asking, does the rosette serve a purpose besides an aesthetic value?
Aesthetic?
That's what I'm asking. Yes.
The rosette piece?
Uh-huh.
No, I wouldn't know. I've always thought that the sound hole, yes, but the rosette, no, I'm not sure. I thought it was just aesthetic, to be honest.
The way that Andy explained it to me was that if you think about the end grain surface of the wood, so that would be like in the direction of the neck and the bridge, that will lose and gain moisture at a different rate than the edge grain. So that's more like closer to the sides of the top. And so because they lose or gain moisture at different rates, that can lead to potential cracking. So a rosette actually helps prevent that.
That makes sense.
That does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So it's not just a pretty face on the soundboard.
Wow. I actually ask that question in every single tour that I give. I remember when Andy first told us that, we had a group of all the tour guides had to get together, and they said, you got to tell this information correctly. So I remember that one. But that is such a good question. Does the rosette serve a purpose?
People sometimes ask if it affects the tone too.
One of the things I was reminded of in watching that video is that the factory is a really cool balance of super high-end modern technology, but also some old school tools that just work just fine. And when I saw the rosette binder, the bender that the heat bender that we use for the rosette, that's a cool little story, Jim. Tell them about that and how that works.
I'm not sure if you might need to lead the witness on that one. You tell me what you know.
Okay, so there's a cylindrical thing in the rosette room that we use to pre-bend rosettes, wooden rosettes, and probably plastic too, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually a electric barbecue starter that you would put in your Weber grill, and then you would put coals around it, and then it heats up and starts your barbecue.
That's right. Yeah.
That's what is used. That's what's mounted inside of that cylinder that we used, and that's been there since, I don't know, day one maybe.
Yeah,
long
some of those tools are still they're still good. Yeah. We'll do that because if we're doing wood pieces for the rosette, it needs to be bent. So we'll soak those wood strips, get them nice and wet, and then they can bend them easly around that. But that's a good point, Andy. Love it.
Such a good one. All right. Here we got three more little clips for you. Next clip is I like how some of our robots look like people.
they're so humanoid. They are. It's true. So we saw obviously some inlay, fretboard inlay stuff. It looks like some presentation series guitars, pretty ornate. It's interesting because think about how long it will take to do that inlay compared to some dot inlays. Definitely more involved in that. And then we saw a number of different processes in the body department, or bind and sand as we call it. And that's also something that can be more detailed, because sometimes there's just one basic piece of binding. Other times there are, you've got purfling in there, and the routing work that you're doing, it can be a little bit more involved. I think a couple of the bodies that we saw had an armrest on them as well. So that's a super labor intensive aspect of craftsmanship that we do, that just it really does kind of underscore the idea of why does a guitar cost a lot, because that, the time and the skill that it takes to do those kinds of things on a guitar, it's substantial.
There's only a handful of people in the factory who can do an armrest. Just like there are skilled men and women who do certain jobs. I don't have any video footage of fretwork. Maybe we'll bring that in later on in these episodes, but that's a very skilled job. Putting binding on is very skilled. It's intense, the amount of detail that they have to go into. And if they mess it up, they got to do it again. Right?
Yeah.
Taping. When I went through training, so one thing that we do when we start working at Taylor is you got to get on the floor and you got to go through orientation. You got to get on the floor and you got to learn how to do all of these steps that you guys are seeing. Right? Yeah, I'm in the marketing department where, you know what I mean? So luckily I'm good with tools. Thanks, Mom. But it's, it is what it is. You get in there. But the thing that freaked me out the most is you see how they tape the binding on while it's gluing, is taking the tape off the top, especially a spruce top guitar. There's a specific way you have to roll the tape kind of at an angle. And if you don't do it right, it will pull the top. It'll shred it, right? Because it's such a soft wood. And
I think Bob described it one time as it's almost like when you pull a strand of celery and it's just that whole filament, a whole piece will peel off. That can happen.
So then what happens? Do you know what happens if that, I mean, they got to cut the top off and do it again, right?
Yeah.
Sand it down.
They train people.
You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. The other thing, miter cuts. It looks easy when you see those guys in binding and body do it. They're doing the miter joint cuts on the little. I mean, it's harder than it looks to do these perfect 90-degree angles by hand and have them. Or no, it's 45. I can't remember. But I've tried it and I suck at it. I was 45. Yeah, I suck at it.
It's a 45 miter with
45.
a little tiny piece of binding.
It's amazing.
Tiny piece of binding, cool. And you. I was just saying you can't. Cool. You don't want to see the line. It's insane.
It's crazy. You need a magnifying glass to really appreciate it. But the other thing is with the beveled armrest, we've come through on tours and you see the guys that do it with that Japanese rasp, and it's just completely manual, but it's so smooth and fluid the way they do it. It's majestic.
It really is. It's fun. All right, we have 2 more clips. Next clip. So awesome.
That's great. So we saw some a combination. We saw some robotic buffing, and we saw a little bit of hand buffing as well. So one of the things that people, if they take the tour, I try to explain is buffing is one of the most physically demanding things that you can do with guitar making if you have to do it, because think about it. You're trying to, first of all, there's tension. You're trying to, maintain a certain amount of keep it regulated. And you think about the shape of a guitar body. It's got all these curves and contours, and you're trying to work around and get a consistent buff on it. So we've always invested in technology that helps take the load off people physically, right? So that's where a robotic buffer is amazing, because you can program Buffy to do that work, and it's super precise. And it can pick it up, and those, when you see it press up against those wheels are pressure compliant, so that's able to maintain a certain regulated amount of pressure, and then Buffy can set it down, pick it up, and complete that. So then we'll finish it by hand, really, I think, as a point of more than anything inspecting the guitars, but robotic buffing. And I think we saw a little splash of the electrostatic spraying, a finish that precedes the buffing part. Super cool.
Robots, we got a comment. Well, we got a comment that said robots do everything. Our robots, a lot of our robots look like people, though.
Yeah.
And they know how to use their robot hands. So it's pretty great. All right. And last and, of course, not least.
A little taste of final assembly. It's where it all comes together. It's it's worth making the point about our necks, because I think the neck assembly process with the body, because of the design of that, it makes it so much easier, and it allows us to micro adjust and set that neck angle precisely every time.
I'm a robot. We can set the net angle every time. That process in training also gave me anxiety. Because,
Really?
well, yeah, I had guitar tech for years, but that's the Taylor way. You have to learn the Taylor way with the Taylor measurement and the Taylor setup. And all the tools to measure the neck angle and make sure that everything's right, and set the neck and to bolt the neck and to loosen the neck and then tighten it again. All of that stuff gave me mad anxiety. I think what happened is they had to take the guitar apart and redo it once I left, but they were being nice. That's for certain. That's for certain. I mean, it just, that's what happened. It definitely. Anyway, but that's it. That's the factory. And going forward, we're going to have these incredibly talented men and women who craft these instruments on the show, and we're going to interview them, and we're going to talk about their day-to-day routines and what happens in their specific department. We do have some other departments we'll bring people in. I couldn't get it all done yesterday. I tried my hardest to get all the footage, but it I was doing 3 other things. So thank you, Jim, for walking us through the factory. Hey, Andy, Lindsay, do you miss the factory? I miss the factory.
I do, yeah.
I mean, working at home is all right, but
no, I miss it a lot. It's really stimulating, and to go there and to see that stuff happening. I think that I say this all the time when I do road shows, Jay. I think that a lot of people who get put in the car and dragged to the tour, right? That someone in the family wants to go see the tour, right? And, oh, come on, kids, it'll be fun. It's an hour and a half long, right? So I think that a lot of people go through that and they just walk away and they just say, oh yeah, that's how you build guitars. But what nobody really gets, a lot of people don't get, is no, that's how Bob Taylor has learned to build guitars over the 40-odd years that he's been doing it. And it wasn't always like that. We saw some of those old pictures of the shop when Tim Laurent was on the program. But
Laurent.
I always that's the way for me. They always think, oh yeah, well, you must just be able to go to Home Depot and order a buffer. No, we had to program. We bought a machine that used to make car parts, and we have a whole department that makes fixtures and jigs to hold guitar parts, and we taught that machine how to make guitars or do the work they do. And the thing that Bob's philosophy that sticks with me all the time is that the things that machines can do better, that's what machines do. And the things that people do better, that's what we use people for. And the machines allow us to hire more people. And that's I think, a really good philosophy that's always stuck in my mind when I explain it to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a question. What? I thought that my guitar was 100% handmade. Robots?
He's bummed out.
You know what? I've always heard from people that I've like told to do the tour. This is when I was working back in final assembly or even in the repair department. They were always so shocked because they've heard about Taylor because we're so innovative. They think that everything is done. They think majority of it's done by machines, CNCs and all these things. And then when they go and they see how many people actually are, working on guitars with their hands and actually craftspeople, they're blown away. They're like, whoa, I was totally wrong. This is not a machine made guitar. This is truly, basically kind of getting exactly what Andy just said. Like machines.
Glenn got a question in customer service just a week ago, and it was a comment, I think, on Facebook, and it basically said, the person said, if you're going to buy a Taylor, buy one before 2011, because that's when they started making them with robots.
It is spectacular. You really do need to see it, and we're gonna give this the most justice we can, right? We're gonna do the best job we can to deliver this content until you get to come back to the factory and check it out. Andy, you had something to say.
Yeah, I wanted to say a lot. I'm not sure if the listeners, the people who are watching our show, know this, but our industry is in a guitar boom right now, right? There are lots of people who have been staying home for the last year, more time on their hands to play and learn guitar. If you've been looking around on a guitar store lately, guitar walls are empty. And in the last year, we have hired 422 new robots. I mean people. We've hired 422 people in the last year because of the growth of our company. And because there's such demand for our guitars. So it's just another good example of how that machinery, how that precision allows us to hire more people.
That's a great point, Andy, because I make that in a similar way, that when we introduce new machines or tools, we never lay someone off. We never lay people off as a result of that. It doesn't take jobs away. It might change the nature of some of the jobs that we do, but it's just enhancing our process. And so it's important for people to understand that.
Yeah.
Workforce development does rock, Scott. It is true. And one thing that what I loved when I first started doing tours and when I learned from people is certain parts of, let's put it into perspective real quick. If we had a human or group of humans who were hand buffing all day long from the start of their shift. They get a couple of breaks, they take a lunch break, a couple of more breaks, but for roughly 8 hours a day, fatigue is going to set in. And there's going to be a lot of inconsistencies. But we got a buffing robot so that we can do most of the work with a robot to help fight that fatigue. Now you have maybe, I think, 4 people who are in that department, and they're buffing nonstop all day long. They're making sure that all of these things are done and done well. That is true. It's a true statement. When we hired how many people, Andy?
422 and trained. I mean, in the last year, in 2020, which is crazy to say that, right? That's insane. You wouldn't
during a pandemic.
Yeah.
That's so true, Jay. That's so true. To your point, like there was a time when our finished department, they were buffing more guitars by hand, like because I think Buffy was able to do up to a certain level of like the cuts and the wheel, so they had to buff a lot by hand. I mean, I was doing finished stuff like repair work and having to buff like 1 or 2 guitars that I would respray or something, and that's a lot of work. So when they were able to kind of change the cuts and the wheels to get the finer buffing, strokes, that was to help our employees out, because you can't maintain that. So yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, here's a great comment JD has, not just fatigue, but repetitive motion injury. I mean, absolutely. These are some of the reasons we do things. The one that I like the best, the story is when I heard Bob, I was on a tour with Bob, and he said, talking about when we started using lasers. We use lasers to cut big parts and small parts, logos, inlay, tops, etc. And he said, imagine if a human had to cut a top on a bandsaw for 8 hours. And just like I said with buffing, by the end of that 8 hours, that top is not gonna. Those tops are gonna vary a little, and this way we can do it very precise. But we need someone to program the lasers and operate the lasers and run the department.
Right.
So there's 3 jobs. So it's wonderful. The factory is wonderful. We're stoked that we get to work at Taylor and show people these things. There aren't a ton of questions, but there were a few. Do Taylor? Well, here we go again. I'll let you answer while I'll be right back.
I'll take a crack at that because I've heard people ask if somebody needs a lot of guitar building experience to come and work there, and usually the answer is no. You have to be really good at doing it the Taylor way, like Jay just said a couple of minutes ago. By the time that you're put on the line, and if your job is to bind or if your job is to sand, it's already been figured out. We're not necessarily looking for somebody who is going to come up with the next new idea, although that's possible as well. But the idea is you need to be able to do the same thing really well with the same level of quality all day long. And that's what we look for. Right?
I came in not knowing how to do anything with guitar. I was a guitar player, a guitar lover. And yeah, I think I would almost say, not that we don't like people that have that experience outside. I think it's always a wealth of knowledge that you want to bring in, but there's something special about someone who's just coming in and learning our way, because we're building Taylors. We're not really building a bunch of different brands. So when you can this is how we do it, and that's the only knowledge they have, is a cool thing.
Yeah, there's a basic skills test, but I think the most important skill that you can have is to be trainable, because we will provide the training for sure.
Absolutely.
Lyndon has a great question. The incorporation of robots in the process helps reduce waste. Does it?
Yeah. For sure. I mean, just that example that Jim just said, if you had to sit and cut a tops on a bandsaw for 8 hours, the inconsistency between those tops would not cut it with what people are used to today. You know, there's a romantic thing about, I've got a handmade instrument. That's a really romantic thing to talk about, right? My guitar is handmade, right?
Yep.
Well, most people, when they see a handmade guitar, they're like, what's this little thing right here that doesn't quite look right? Well, that's handmade, you know? and you look around you in our life, and you look at the precision that you have on your phones and the precision that you have on modern appliances and stuff, and that is what we've come to expect, you know. And there's no, of course, I would love to have a guitar that somebody sat and it took them 6 months to build that. Of course, that's great, but that's not what we do, and we are known for quality and precision, and that's how we get it.
Bob talked about that early on in his career, having to get over the mental idea that the longer it takes to build a guitar, the better it will be, right? Because that's not necessarily the case. And then to the robot point, I would expand it not just to robot, but technology. So I think probably a good example would be something like the electrostatic spray, which is combined with robots. So we're able to spray using electrostatic attraction. We can spray finish more efficiently. So we were able to save a lot of material costs. I think the first year we deployed it, I was told we saved about $500,000 in material costs because we were not overspraying guitars. So technology definitely helps that.
And, you know, Andy, you said something about precision at the end, and I did see a question in the feed. I don't think we put it in, but it's something about, do we use Plex? And that's a common question, because there are a lot of companies that do. Did you see that one?
I did. I'll find it, and then I'll come back to the question I just saw.
Yeah, but Jim kind of hit on why we don't need to use Plex. We don't use Plex in our factory because of the CNC and the machining. We're able to do it with such precision that we don't have to use Plex. Our repair department has a Plex machine, though. We do. And that's, I mean, We still do a lot of refretting by hand and all that stuff. But there's an occasion when it's like, yeah, we can throw it in the Plek. But we're the only people that. Well, I was on the department. I'm not there no more. We're the only people that did use that machine.
I couldn't find it. It was up there pretty far, but yeah.
Yeah.
The repair department has a Plek machine, but
Yep.
we explain what a Plex is. It's called a Plek machine. I believe it's PLEC. Plek.
Might be PLEK.
It's PLEK. Yeah.
PLEK. All right. Well, this is how much we don't have one. we don't use them, and I believe in Quick it just runs a laser across the top and then sands. How does it work?
It's
you do a better job of it.
And I'll do a very small job in comparison to like what one of our repair guys that used it on a daily, use it a lot can tell you. But one of our guys is really good at this machine. But yeah, the laser goes and it calculates the distance where the frets are, looks at for any inconsistencies, and then from there it'll sand. It basically is a fret leveling tool, or it'll sand out your fretboard to make it perfectly straight. I mean, the old way of doing it, you would take all your frets out if you're not doing just a fret level. If you take all your frets out and you're sanding the fretboard, you have a leveler, straight edge, and you're kind of seeing where those bumpy spots are. But the Plek makes that much easier. It's just like measures it, and then it takes care of that. It goes and it sands and levels what needs to be leveled. So it's a useful tool for especially for the repair department.
And some manufacturers use it.
Some manufacturers do use it.
Go out into the world.
And I think Sweetwater actually, like, if you they actually for that service too, you're buying, if you buy it, like I've seen it there. They say, oh, a couple whatever $100 more for a Plek service or something. So yeah, a lot of people use it.
Interesting. Jeff has a question here. How often do you end up with a guitar that has a blemish in it? Anyone want to take that one? Hands off the guitars. We don't want thumbprints.
I mean, I guess it depends on how you define blemish, because something might be a blemish to one person, but it's a character trait, that's beautiful to another person. So it depends on if you're talking about, like, if there's a ding in the finish, then that's something that we would want to fix, right, in the finish process. But if there's a spot that's just natural character in the wood, especially with some of the guitars we produced this past year, the American Dream guitars, we looked for character grade wood that wasn't necessarily absolutely pristine in its coloration everywhere. It had more grain. And so I guess it depends on how you would define a blemish. I think we have our quality standards across the board in terms of aesthetics, and we adhere to those. But you'll find in the wood all kinds of different color spots, birthmarks, whatever,
Birthmarks. Here's a good question. What is a typical day like for someone that works in the factory? A typical COVID day is a little bit different. Before the pandemic, there was a lot more action happening in the factory. In order for us to come back to work and continue to build instruments, we had to spread everybody out. And so there's, 8 to 10 feet between each person now, no matter what. We walk. It has changed the way we manufacture guitars, but we walk kind of separated. Those of us who aren't working on the production floor, we have to get special HR clearance in order to be on the floor. We do that because if our men and women who work in our manufacturing departments are the essential ones. We need to make these instruments, and they want to be there, building these, and crafting these instruments. So they show up early. They work hard. They work with pride. I don't think I've ever seen anybody doing a skilled job on the factory floor with a frown on their face. It's so fulfilling to watch an instrument go from what you saw as a large piece of lumber all the way to a finished instrument. So I think all in all, I can't speak for the folks that work on the floor, but I could tell you they have a good time doing it. That's for sure. And then there's one last question I think I want to get to, and that was, I might have lost it. How many guitars do we make a day? The number that Bob Taylor told me today was 799.
One clarifying point on that is that we don't make those guitars in one day. We complete that number of guitars a day. So that's helpful for people to know sometimes, because it takes what Lindsay was about anywhere from 7 to 12 days, basically from start to finish with a guitar, more or less. Somewhere around there, more or less, yeah. Yeah, so we complete 790 something a day. It's extraordinary, and because even with it's probably worth noting with our Tecate operation that we had to transform that also with COVID, because we have the number of employees we had there. We had to reduce how many people were in the factory at one time. And so we actually stretched that out then over basically over a 7-day-a-week production cycle. And I don't know if is it a 3-shift operation? It's a pretty substantial operation, but we 24 hours. So we had to basically reconfigure the entire setup, the arrangement of production there for safety, which we were able to do and get back up to the levels. I think that number we're doing now is the most that we've ever done.
Yep.
Yeah.
800 guitars a day between both factories. We also need to clarify that. I don't know what the numbers are now from El Cajon to Tecate, but it's 800 or 799 in one day. And I believe Bob said it was a record. So
it is. And
we're continuing to build with the utmost craftsmanship and detail put into every instrument. It's spectacular. Anyway, we can keep this show rolling so that we can get done with it. We could talk about the tour forever. We definitely could talk about the factory forever and the men and women who make our instruments. And Jim, man, it's been awesome having you on the show.
It's been a pleasure to be with you guys.
Yeah, it's so fun to sit here and hear stories from you. We do have a couple of segments because you know how this show goes, Jim. You know how the show goes. The first segment is called Lindsay's Question. She will stump you most likely. But, Andy, do you have a song?
She might stump you before you know. This has happened on the show. And no one knows what's on her mind. Her question is designed to get to know you. To get to know Curlin.
Wow.
There you go.
All right, Jim, walk with me for a second. So you are writing a fiction novel. What's the title of your novel and what is it about?
Ooh. Oh, man. Let's see. I think it's going to have to be about some robots who work in a guitar factory and become sentient beings. Things get really weird. What would it be called?
Did she stump you?
She
I thought, he's a writer. He probably has tons of titles in his bag.
No. I can't give you a title. I don't know. Robo guitar.
Well, it's Robo Guitar. That's what we have.
Robo guitars. Wow. Wow.
I love that.
Lindsay, you did a good one. That was a good one.
Thank you.
Man.
Well played. Well,
you know what time it is? It's time for this echo to come back. Hold on. I'm back. Take it away, Andy.
Most days it don't matter how much useless stuff you know, but here on the primetime part of the show is trivia. You might just win some swag. Trivia. A park and holding that goodie bag. Trivia.
We're doing trivia before 2 minutes of sports tonight. And the winners, there's 2 prizes. We're giving away an exotic guitar hanger.
Ooh.
So you know the deal. Email us, primetime@taylorguitars.com. Give us your information. Supply chain is a little backed up. We're a couple of weeks behind, but we're getting you guys gifts. They'll be rolling in. You might get a little delay here. But we have 2 questions. So there will be 2 winners tonight. The first question is, you guys know the rules. Gabriel and Paul Tobias cannot answer the questions. All right. Now that I've said that out loud, we have 2 questions. The first question is, you guys ready? And no, the answer is 1974. The first question is, what year was the first issue of Wood and Steel published? '94, I saw it. 1994. We got to get back to it. I don't know who said it though.
I think Gabe put it in our chat.
Gabe put it in the chat. Who did it, Gabriel?
Stan
Step 3. Mm-hmm. Congratulations, Stan. Send us an email to primetime@taylorguitars.com and we will get your information and send this out.
Exotic.
By the way, Lindsay, I have my title of my novel.
I need to know it.
The robot takes over Bob Taylor's body, so it's called Robob.
Yes.
Nice.
Robob. I love it.
Robob. That's such a good one.
So bad.
That's so good.
Such a good one. That's like a Rich Cachado joke right there.
Total bad joke.
That was awesome. That was great. Rich is
We're going
jealous. All right. And the next question is, ladies and gentlemen, what year was the Baby Taylor introduced? In what year? 2-year questions. What year was the Baby Taylor introduced? Holy smokes. Jag Productions. I believe you live in Singapore. And you got the answer right, I believe. Gabriel, check me. Who got it right, Gabriel? Yeah. Congratulations.
All right.
You got it right, Mr. Productions. All right. Wonderful. All All right. You want to do some two sports? It won't even take 2 minutes. But you want to do 2 minutes of sports? We can do 2 minutes of sports. You want to play a song or do you want me to play a clip first? You play a song.
Two minutes of sports. I looked at today's news. Did they overpay Dak? Baseball is back, and he's beef with Shaq. Osaka attack. Moon is ready to fight. It's been a kryptonite. Can't pay hat trick night on 2 minutes of sports.
Jim, Philadelphia Phillies. The Philadelphia Phillies traded Fergie Jenkins to the Cubs in 1966. Is this still considered one of the worst trades in baseball history?
One of the worst? I would say no.
You would say no? You know who would beg to differ?
Who?
Paul Tobias. We brought Paul Tobias in for 2 minutes of sports, ladies and gentlemen.
Nice.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for another wonderful show of Taylor Primetime. Another wonderful episode. Next week, we have an artist, but we are not going to tell you who. It's going to be a surprise. It's going to be fun times next week. And I hope you join us next week. Same time, same spot. You'll get your email to remind you. Primetime trivia winners, send us an email. We'll get you. And Jim, thank you so much for hanging out with us, man.
My pleasure.
It's been too long to be able to sit face to face with you, so this was close enough.
The next best thing. Yep.
The next best thing. Thank you guys all so much for joining. We had a really great show this week. We hope you enjoyed some of these clips. Guess what? They're only going to get better. Andy, you want to take it away?
What was it? What was it? It was prime time. It was prime time. What the heck was it? What was that? Well, that was prime time. Tonight you met Jim Curlin. He writes the wood and steel. If you're an editorial director, you need to keep it real. Jim's a real wordsmith, and his knowledge is quite vast. Thanks for talking on the prime time. We hope it won't be your last time to be on prime time. On a Tuesday, sometime in the future, on prime time. Good night, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening. Have a great week, and we'll see you all real soon.
Before we go away, we got one last question. Kent has. I have a question about a Taylor product I'm interested in. Where/who do I go for an honest answer? You can hit us up at our support network, right? What is the email? Do we know? service@taylorguitars.com?
I think support.
I think it's support.
Support
at taylorguitars.com. But there also is a Facebook owners group, the Taylor Guitars owners group on Facebook. You will get an honest answer from everyone out there. Trust me. Thank you, Kent, for asking your question. See you all next week. Virtual high five. We love you. Thank you.
Thanks.